Hey guys, what's going on? Thank you for tuning back into the channel. It's really good to have you guys again here. We are really working hard to put this content out for you guys. Today, we have Pastor James with us again. A lot of youths have been thinking about, probably, mostly, the topic we're going to be talking about is God's will and purpose for your life. Does everyone have a God given destiny, Pastor James?
Absolutely, all of us have a purpose, as what the Bible said, that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearfully and wonderfully made means when there's beauty, there's purpose. So God created, when He created heaven and the earth, and when He fashioned the earth, He said it is good. Good means in the description of God, there's always a purpose. And the purpose means it always generates life, it always multiplies. So, the questions that a lot of young people ask, do I have a purpose in life? You definitely have a purpose in life. Yeah.
That's great. That's great that everyone has a purpose in their lives given by God. But let's say there's a lot of youths that they are not really serving, they're not really going to church, especially with the situation with COVID going around and everything like that. What do you think? Like, could it be taken away from you? Could it be something that you lose? Because we know that God is a gracious and loving Father, and He will give us a million and one chances, for sure. But is it something that will be given to us? It will happen on its own? Or is it something that we have to faithfully, actively pursue it?
That's a good question. In fact, all of us have a destiny, and all of us, if you read the book of Kenneth Hagin about I Believe in Visions, he said that there is a specific calling of God, or rather, will of God, and there's a permissive will of God. Permissive means I do things good because I'm a Christian. I'm doing things according to my quota because I am a Christian. But the difference between a permissive will and the perfect will is I'm walking under the guidance of God. So what is the guidance of God? It's always knowing where God wants you to be. For example, coming to church. It is not a question whether I should go to the temple or the house of God, because we are all supposed to come to the house of God to worship Him. Because you see, Jesus died for the church. The early ministers died for the church. The early church leaders died for the church, not the building, but for the gathering. So if we miss the gathering, means you miss the community of people of purpose. You see? So once we how do I know the purpose of God, though I'm not coming to church? I would say to young people, especially teenagers, if you want to know the will and purpose of God, you have to seek the face of God, not just on your own, but with the congregation, with the people of God. Because in the people of God, together in the community, you have the elders, the young adults, the youths. So you have a group of people from many walks of life. Some of them are doctors, some of them are dentists, some of them are engineers, some of them are mechanics. So from their walks of life in the community, because you see, as a young person, we will only be involved in these people with this kind of community in the church. If you ask me as a young person, where can you be involved in a community where there's an elder, or rather a grandpa, grandma, a father, a mother, a young adult, a young couple, So I think that there's no place on earth quite like a church. And that is a blessing. And sometimes we forget, because you see, as a young person, I'm going to school, and then I go to work. I'm always with the same age group. And the problem with I'm always with the same age group is that you don't get the wisdom from those who are 10 years ahead of you, 20 years ahead of you. You may know them, but not as much from the community of inside the church, because we are all our family. So I would advise young people to come to church, be with the community, find counsel from the wise people, from the matured people, from people who mentors you. Because finding the will of God is of essence, especially in this time, in this hour. Because without knowing your purpose, then what's the reason for life? You know, what's the reason for work? What's the reason of having a family if the family does not, or rather not under the lordship of Christ? Yeah.
So what you're saying essentially is that it will happen naturally when we actively try and do the basics of coming to church, having that lifestyle with God. So what about this? Like, what if there's youth in the church where they don't really fancy doing media stuff. They're shy to be in the worship team. They're shy to be the part of the ushers. So how would one find that purpose?
Oh, in the church.
Yeah.
I think for teenagers, of course, it takes time to know their, who they are or their abilities. So what I would suggest is to try out. You can try evangelism ministry, sharing Jesus to others, or you can try usher. You can be shy. I was shy when I was young. When I was a teenager, I'm very shy. But because the love of God just covered me and consumed my heart, I couldn't help but to serve. But of course, many young people will still ask, will I find my purpose serving God? I would say in that community, you will kind of know, okay, this is my strengths. It could be art, it could be communication, it could be planning. Then you discover, oh, I'm actually good at this. Then that ability or that discovery can be used outside. Then vice versa. You're working outside or you're studying outside, whatever things that you can use there, you can come back to the church and use it for the house of God. So you see the holistic view of the will of God, that the will of God does not just automatically come, but it's discovered. Because it's already pre-written. The Bible says that before I was born and when I'm conceived in my mother's womb, my book, my life is in the book that you've written. That's what David says. All of us have been, God has a plan for us, but the question is whether we are willing to follow.
I see. Thank you, Pastor James. So practically speaking, you've told us about everybody has a call given by God. You told us that we have to actively pursue it as well. So practically speaking, how would one know what their actual call is for their lives?
That's a good question. I've asked that question many times when I was a teenager. Lord, what is my plan? What is your plan for my life? What is my calling? And when you read the Bible, the book of Jeremiah says that for I have plans for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you hope and a future. So which means that on the get-go, I'm already confident because God has a future for me, that I'll be blessed, I'll be abundant, that He will be with me, and I have a future, so I don't need to think about that. But Lord, how do I walk with you in your will? How do I fulfill it? So all of us have a calling from God, and Jesus said in the Bible that love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, right? And we tend to forget that, like what I've said earlier, right, about having a relationship with different people in different walks of life, different age group. But in that manner, the higher level of knowing the will of God is knowing who God is. Because the thing is, when we know who God is, we know His person, we know His character. So the person of God is always, He's the God of love, He's a God of blessing. When Jesus was on earth, He was a blessing, and you know what He did? He did what He was called to do, what the Father called Him to do. So He raised the dead, He healed the sick, He set the oppressed free, and everywhere He go, He was a blessing. So as a young person, one of the considerations that we must always think about is, am I a blessing? Or how can I be a blessing? Or how can I serve in the pursuit that I want to take as a person, as an individual? Because when we study the Bible as a young person, right, we understand that I am not on my own. I am not a blessing for me. When I discover who God is, His purpose for me is to be a blessing to many. So which means that the thing that I'm going to pursue, how many people will be blessed by what I do? For example, media. People in our church, our media team, our awesome media team, because of the service that they do, people don't know them, but we've reached thousands of people, and because of that work, and that is being a blessing. Just an example, so knowing the will of God is to know God, and when you know God, you will know His mind. So when we know His mind, we grow in a level where we do not need to ask God every time, like a baby. Now, God, what do you want me to do today? Though we ask the Lord, but as we grow, we will have the mind of Christ. Then we know what He wants us to do. That's the spiritual aspect. But the practical aspect is very much easy, actually. You will learn that your calling is very close to your gifts, to your talents, your ability. For example, you are good in music. Why would you take engineering if you're good at music? Let's say you're good in math and you enjoy it, then take engineering or take architecture. So it means you narrow down your choices as a student. So for me, when I was in Sec 4, I was thinking, what should I pursue? Either, you believe it or not, aircraft engineering or music.
You've strayed far.
And then, because that's what my dad, used to do, So I was praying, I was asking God, Lord, what should I do? I love you, so I want to follow, Because my thoughts were, which, cannot be applied to a lot of us, because all of us have different walks, right? If I'm gonna struggle in the world, I might as well struggle in the will of God, in that work of God. Since everything is tough anyway. So that was my in my mind. And then my mom had a vision. In her vision, she saw me in two scenarios. One is I was doing engineering, and I looked gloomy and sad. And second is I was doing music, teaching children, having the Bible in my hands. Then my mom called me and she was crying. And then she said, James, pursue music. So there and then I knew in my heart, okay, so I'm going to pursue God, not just in music, I'm going to pursue God in worship. Because I was growing up playing music, practicing like 6 hours a day, just spending time in worship. So definitely I knew that this is my call. This is where God has called me, and that's my direction. So for young people, that's why, in this segment also we talk about social media and the effects of it. And one of the things is, to know your calling means you do not waste a lot of time. I'm not saying that you cannot have a hobby. You can have a hobby, but if that hobby is not giving you any worth as a person, it's not giving you a value as a person, means that that hobby is not helpful. So I would really suggest to a lot of young people out there who's listening to our program today to really consider, I can play games, of course, you can watch movies, of course, that's not an issue, but always have a very purposeful week that you have, that, for example, I'm 15 years old, should I know what I'm going to do when I'm 21? It may not be. Your job is to study. So what if I'm after JC or after secondary school, I'm going to pursue college, university, what course should I take? Then prayerfully ask the Lord, what should I do, Lord? Because we are not, we are the sons of God, the daughters of God. We do not plan, or rather, we don't just think, I'm going to pursue this so that I have a lot of money. So what is the purpose of money? So again, as what we, if I can put it this way, we want to ask God, what's your plan for me? But we should also ask ourselves, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Why am I thinking the things that I'm thinking? You see, because in that thought process, we learn that, you see, there's always a purpose in things that we do. And lastly, in that point of practically how do I find my calling, usually in your calling, there is a push. Somehow your heart is pushed to do it. For example, media. For example, worship. For example, sharing the word. For example, things that you're passionate about. Second is there's a pool. Somehow there is this somehow ministries or opportunities opens for you. You're always pulled in that direction, you know. And thirdly, there's always a conviction, you know. So there's these are just things that as a young person we need to pay attention. That we are not pressured by we're not so much pressured by the world, by our parents, by whoever is in around us, our friends, you know. Just because your grades are higher, then you need to get up there. Not necessary, right? Yeah. So that's just my take.
So, Pastor James, you mentioned that your mom had a vision about you doing music and teaching kids. So, in that aspect, how important do you think, as a young individual, should we have a mentor, or should we have somebody that we are accountable to, or should we eliminate that middleman and just straight say like only accountable to God? You know, how important is that accountability?
That's a good question. Highly, you know, it should have a high importance in our lives, because you see, in the Bible, in a Hebrew way of doing things, they always have their fathers as their mentor, you know. And they don't hand over things without guidance, without mentoring. Of course, there are instances like Moses, for example. Who was Moses' mentor? Nobody. But he was educated in the Egyptian way of doing things. Means he has a certain wisdom and knowledge, and then he was a shepherd as well. So of course, in his case, God used him as a mighty man, and not many of us are called that way, you know. But Joshua was mentored by Moses, and a lot of men of God after that were mentored by somebody. And even Timothy, when he was planting the church, or rather, when Paul sent him to this place on behalf of him, he was mentored by Paul. Jesus mentored the disciples. So if you ask me, do we need to have mentors? Yes, we do. Because mentors are meant to watch over us and to be accountable with our lives. Because the thing is, nobody on earth is above counsel. All of us need to be counseled, and all of us make mistakes. So as our mentors. So our mentors are also accountable to somebody else, and to a certain degree accountable to the mentees as well, because they will share their life with them. They will share certain things that is permissible to share and bring together. So it's a very beautiful thing, if you ask me. Having a mentor and having a mentee, and then you're forming that relationship that is kind of unique. It's unique more than, you know, having a blood relative sometimes. You know, so I would again advise a lot of young people, if you do not have a mentor, if you do not have anybody to help you walk in the ways of God, and even in your life, find somebody, you know, find somebody in the church, find somebody in, you know, especially in the church. And where else can you find, right? Because I remember when I was, let me see, oh, when I met your dad, when I met Dr. Stephen Francis, you know, I was 18, coming to 19. I remember me always going to his meetings. And then when I had an opportunity to connect with him, sometimes I'll go to his house, sing worship, you know, just talk, have tea together, and I don't know whether he was annoyed or irritated with me being there, but you know, I knew that I need to learn from him. You know, so there has to be a pursuit. You know, and a lot of young people are always waiting. I think that's the mistake a lot of young people make, where I'm just waiting for him to mentor me. I'm just waiting for this youth pastor to mentor me. Yeah. The thing is, when you read the Bible, I mean, Jesus, of course, he said, "Follow me." But Jesus did not say, and he did not constantly woo them to follow him. No. When Jesus asked the disciples to follow him, the disciples ran after him and pursued what he does. So it's not the, it's not me as a Menzi, I'm waiting. You must pursue. If you want something, you pursue something. That's why we go to school, because we pursue what we want to study and who we want to be in the future, right? So it's the same in the spiritual aspect. You want to grow in Christ, you want to know the will of God for your life, then pursue it. Pursue mentors, pursue people of wisdom who can, give oversight over your life, give an insight and wisdom over your life. Yeah.
Now, since we are talking about accountability and all that, I'm definitely sure that there are a number of youths where they made some mistakes, they messed up, they were doing good in the Lord, serving and everything, but they kind of slipped off. Maybe they could have even had a mentor, somebody, but they lost that accountability, they lost that bond. Maybe they're thinking like, like maybe I lost it. Maybe their feeling of self-worth is not as high as it used to be. How would you encourage them to pursue and not still keep their head down?
Very good. So yeah, I mean, I've encountered a lot of young people who say that, they've been hurt from the church, they've been hurt from the leadership or the previous mentor. What I would say is all of us in one point of time will be hurt. Um, Most of us, if not all of us, will have a falling off one way or another, and that is called, ladies and gentlemen, life. you know, we all go through this, but does that mean the goodness of God change? Does that mean the sovereignty of God change? Does that mean the person and the love of God change? It does not change. What changes is our perspective sometimes. So does that mean I stop coming to church? I stop looking for mentors to mentor me? So probably that season ended because God wants you to move in another way or teaching you another realm, and then He will give you another mentor to learn. I've experienced that a lot. Um, when the more I grow in the Lord, the more my mentors will change. From small to teenager to a working adult, and my for the I think my longest mentor is Dr. Stephen Francis. And longest time I should say, because we formed such a relationship, you know, that I think we both can take a bullet. So I would encourage all of us, young people. Some of you might have been hurt. Some of you might have been going through things in life and all of that. How do I get back that confidence again? Is to really bring it to the Lord in prayer and ask the Lord, Lord, help me so that I can overcome. Help me, Lord, so that I can release this to you so that you can walk again. So maybe some of us in one season we might not have any mentors, that's okay. But make sure that as we walk with the Lord, that we have people around us that we are accountable together. Because otherwise, we might be doing something that is outside God's permissive will. So that's why it's very important. And lastly, in this, since we're talking about, you're hurt, I just want to give this thought to all of us, right? That Jesus was betrayed as well. The people who welcomed him in where he was crucified were, I don't know, were the same people, but they were, mocking him. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. But did that stop Jesus from dying for us? It did not stop, right? Did that stop Jesus from trusting his Father in heaven? It did not stop. Though he knew the pain, though he knew the hurt, though he knew that it is difficult, he will go through this, but yet he still went throughout the pain, the lashes, the thorn on his head, and the cross, because he knew that the love of the Father is greater than anything.
Right, thank you so much, Pastor James. I think we have learned a lot. I think it's been an encouragement as well. It's been a good advice that you've given, and really great encouragement also. So for all you guys, young people watching, that is all we have for this video. I hope you guys have been blessed. I hope you guys have learned and definitely be encouraged. So no matter what you went through, no matter what mistakes we have all made, God definitely has a plan for you, and all we gotta do is just actively pursue it, be accountable to someone, find a mentor, and God's will happen in your life. Take care, guys.